Draft your LCS team and earn money. Alpha Draft.
Previously on the European LCS.
Gambit Gaming destroy Giants Gaming's Nexus. GG, GG.
I feel good to break that losing streak, and now we're looking forward to actually get a huge win.
Elements gave up the inhibitor from poor positioning. They gave up Baron. Honestly, it looks like they've given up this game.
I didn't expect Elements to be on a slump.
H2k have got the coordination, the control, and they are arresting Elements on the map.
Bullet is just too slow, and just like that, a spear, a shot, an ace in the hole.
Welcome back to Week 4 of the European League Championship Series Spring Split. We're broadcasting to you live from Berlin, Germany. In just moments ago, everything got underway here. Fans are rolling in, about to look for their seats for the very first game. ROCCAT looking to bounce back from their defeat yesterday, and they seem to be in very good spirits. And of course, their opponents in the first game of the day, H2k, running out the stage, getting ready to get set up and continue that flow after beating Elements, of course, on the first day yesterday. I'm Ifje Shock supporter here with Trevor Quickshot Henry, and joining us is our support on the desk this week, Mitch Krepo-Voorspoels. Good to have you guys here again.
It's good to be back.
Yep, let's pick up right where we left off yesterday with a look at the standings. Still in first place after a strong showing against the Wolves is SK Gaming with 7 wins and no losses. Fnatic is safely in the number 2 spot at 6-1, and the Unicorns of Love are sharing 3rd place at the moment with Elements. The rest of the table is pretty locked up as teams will start to worry about potential relegation positioning in the coming weeks. Now, with the table in mind, let's talk about some of yesterday's action as we saw it there. H2k coming out the gate strong versus Elements. Good pick and ban phase and flawless in-game decision making.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think if you look at H2k, they punished a mistake, on Nif getting that first blood with Kasing back in the roster. But more impressive than punishing the mistake is how H2k used that to steamroll the rest of the game. They played the map, they got an advantage, and they took a win.
Yep.
And I just liked the way they played, like with unrelenting aggression, and then once they started snowballing, you saw how confident they got really here. Rio basically got cut out, but they basically, Kasing walks up because he had his advantage, by the way. He doesn't stay there, he roams mid. What I really liked about Kasing, at one point in the game, he will literally just throw his lantern backwards and start playing up forward. He's like, come on guys, come at me, come and hit me. And nobody came because Elements were so far back. But at the same time, H2k, they never overreached, You saw that fight that was just on your screen. Back and forward every time, got engaged, walk back, Elements try to reach for something, H2k denies it, they jump back in, they get a kill, and slowly but surely they took that game and they just, grabbed hold of it.
Yep, they drove it home, and because of that loss for Elements, Unicorns of Love later in the day was able to tie for 3rd place after they beat ROCCAT. And very impressive performance by the Unicorns of Love, and ROCCAT dropping the ball, maybe even starting in picks and bans.
Yeah, I really think so. The team composition that Unicorns put together was really strong, Crepa. You were talking about this yesterday and earlier today, but I'm more surprised about how dominant Unicorns were in this matchup. There's so much expectation on ROCCAT that they're simply not living up to. And Unicorns of Love, everyone's like, they've got unique picks, they've got these oddball champions. They're not using them. They're using standard meta picks, and they are winning off the back of really strong performances and really strong decision-making in game.
I'd almost argue that the draft was somewhat okay, but they should have just lane swapped. I don't know why they chose for those lane. Mao kind of lane swap is great. Your Kog'Maw Thresh lane is going to suffer if you play against Morgana and Caitlyn, especially when Morgana's on healer side. One of these better supports that he plays. He plays main Thresh, so he knows the matchup in and out, and then he has one of the, not really counters, but say it is a soft counter, one of his main champions in there as well, with the range advantage from the Caitlyn, and they play that, so you all play that perfectly, Neil. Aggressive pushing lanes, literally just diving in between, transitioning into a poke siege comp, and they closed that game out so clean, there was nearly nothing ROCCAT could do.
Yeah, and the thing that's the most interesting is if the teams we've talked about, H2k, ROCCAT, Unicorns of Love, they were all sort of in the running for the top 6, top 7 position, with H2k actually probably being towards the bottom of those expectations. But after 4 weeks of games, it's ROCCAT that are now falling down, and Unicorns and H2k, at least in my mind, that are gaining the expectation because they simply seem to be growing and adapting to the stage.
I want to see how Kasing evolves, though. He had a really good one game, but it may have been just a fluke. well, or a good fluke, the anti-fluke really. So I want to see how he does better in the next coming games. But I have faith. He seems to be a good support player.
We will see. And above all is SK still reigning solo at the top of the table with their fantastic win streak. 7-0 now. If they win today, that means they even out Alliance's winning streak of last year. And if they win versus Fnatic next week, Thursday, in that match, then they are on par with Fnatic's winning streak of the spring split of 2013 with 9 wins. And for them, yesterday we saw again, it was Fox this time who got to step up and carry the game.
Yeah, the thing that was great about that particular performance is Forgiven for the first time has been controlled. I think that's the term I'm going to use because he struggled in lane up against Freeze and that Kalista. But more importantly is, as a unit, SK have got multiple carries. We know Freddy can carry, we know Sven can carry, we know Forgiven can carry, and Fox, you can see him, he just melted people yesterday. He really, really stepped up and shone without the assistance of his team.
I think the Forgiven rated bot lane actually dealt well with the pressure, because in my mind, even though apparently both Freeze and Forgiven disagree, I think Annie Kalista should win that bot lane really hard. And so I'm happy that they dealt well with the pressure, because a lot of people, when you play with Forgiven, he tends to get a little unhappy when a lot of people come for what they call the bot lane party. You know, he really likes just playing 2v2. So that's one strategy, hashtag just tilt him. Just keep going bottom, over and over and over. But he seemed to deal well with the pressure. I think he died only once and Rated stayed alive, and Rated ended with like 3-0-4 at one point. So didn't really do all too much for them. And yeah, you can try and keep one part of SK down, but the rest will just win.
The thing that really stands out as well is you actually asked Ray today in the interview, what is he feeling? And there was a fairly down-to-earth response. It's in the back of our minds, but we're just playing game by game, and you never know what's going to take him off that #1 peg. They are exceeding expectations and performing fantastically.
And all the interviews actually not resting on their laurels, just calm and collected into that next game. And for all the stats, facts, figures, and analysis, you could, and whatever you would want, point your browser to @LLesports.com. You can track fantasy leaders, look back at past performances, and much, much more. Now, throughout today's games, we want to hear from you. So hop on Twitter and give a shout out to our guest on the desk this week. Whether you're looking for tips on your Thresh play or want to know what it's like to be behind the analyst desk, tweet your questions at LL Esports and use that hashtag AskCrepo. And well, now we're on the topic of asking...
Hold on. I'm going to let you finish in a moment. You know, our boy here can answer great questions later, but I've actually got a hashtag AskCrepo question of my own. And Crepo, I know you're single. I know you're looking for love. Will you be my Valentine?
Of course I would, quick shot.
Oh. There you have it.
Quick shot with the Kanye interruption. Hi.
Kanye did it better. All right, let's get on with the show, boys.
We'll check back in with you guys at home later in the show and answer some of your tweets on air. Now, let's get down to business, real business, and look at today's first games. The first up is H2k versus ROCCAT. Then SK will take on Giants, and we'll end the week with MYM facing the Unicorns of Love. What games are you particularly looking forward to? Elements looking to bounce back versus Gambit could be a saucy one.
My eyes are on Elements and ROCCAT. I think I want to see how they handle their losses from yesterday, and if we can see some growth in the decision-making and in-game play.
Yeah, I'm going to have to agree with Chucks here. Like, the Elements Gambit matchup, I think both teams disappointed yesterday. So I want to see who comes out on top and how. I think it doesn't matter who wins or loses. I think the manner in which they do it is more important for the rest of the season.
All right, to dive into our first matchup, H2k versus ROCCAT. We're going to see how this one is. H2k, of course, flying high after that victory yesterday, but can they keep it going? Because ROCCAT has something to prove.
Yeah, and they've also got the Alliance curse from last summer split. Win everything one week, lose everything the next week, and back and forth. With their win yesterday against Elements, and seeing how shaky ROCCAT looked, they might be able to pick up another 2-0 week.
Let's start by taking a look at the lineup for H2k. Odowamne, Lulex, Ryu, Yarnan, Kissing, and their coach Prowley. I said a victory over Elements yesterday. The debut for Kissing, we already touched on it a little bit. What exactly did he bring? He was very nervous, and he said it was so nerve-wracking to be back on this stage, but if that's how you perform under nerves, that's pretty good.
I mean, it's likely that a player coming out of solo queue or a little break is going to resort to 2v2s. So what I really want ROCCAT to watch out for is not give the bot lane the camp uncontested, you know, or at least assume they will take it and then play accordingly. If they get a camp up on you level 1, play back in lane. If not, match the camp and try to win, or lane swap. And that's what I want to see in this matchup for sure.
We'll see. They are up against ROCCAT. Let's take a look at their lineup on the red side for this one. Overpow, Jankos, Nukeduck, Woolite, Vander, and they are coached by Ducky. And you actually talked to Ducky yesterday. He was saying how they can't fall behind early, they don't fall behind early, but that was exactly the case versus the Unicorns of Love, who basically steamrolled them from start to end.
The thing with ROCCAT is they show that they are okay in the mid to late game, but they're always down on gold. They've got the same problem that SK had last summer, where their laning phase seldom goes the way that they want it to. And the thing about ROCCAT as well, they're just too passive. We really don't see them being very proactive. We don't see them trying to push the map, play the map aggressively. And that's a large part of why they are falling behind so early, so often. And I think they need to figure out how do they play a bit more aggressively, how do they take charge of a game.
One of those things could be the picks. When we talked to Woolite last week after their victory, he says, well, I don't always have to be on those late game hyper carries yet. They went for Kog'Maw again and betting on that, which might not be the style for him.
Yeah, I think it might actually be smart for them to pick not necessarily an assassin, but something with playmaker potential. Nukeduck, have Jankos camp him, give something the likes of a Corki. On Woolite, Corki can always tie the lane. If not, push, allow Vander to roam even more, and they do snowball from the center of the map, and then let that flow in either top lane. You can help Overpower, and he can carry. You can help your bot lane, they can carry. But Nukeduck's been struggling. Jankos, help your mid laner. Two-man roam squad comes out, and I think that's a way for ROCCAT to go in this game.
We'll decide which route they decide to go as we hand it over to the casters. We'll hear from Nukeduck himself on H2k's last-minute mid-lane edition at the start of the spring split.
I think he lost his skill a bit. Like, you can still see in the way he plays like lane phase and the map overall really well, because he has been practicing a lot in Korea on the best team, so he knows how to play the lane phase and how to play the map. But his like reactions and team fights when a lot of stuff is going on is not that good. So yeah, he has like some really strong points and some less strong points. From what I know, Rio actually communicated better than Fabiven did. We are in the same office with them, so we talk to them like on a daily basis. But overall, the team have been doing quite bad in LCS, but online they're playing really well, and Udamne, their top laner, is really good too, so there is no way we're taking that match lightly.
Some mixed praise there, and maybe a little bit of wishful thinking in his matchup going forward. I mean, Nukeduck had a rough game there.
He did, and it's not the first time we have seen Nukeduck really struggle here on the big stage in the LCS. He needs to step up his game, like the analyst just said.
Indeed, indeed. Now, hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Devin, Pyrotechnics Young, and manning the desk with me today, as you have noticed, of course, is Martin DeFicio Linga, as we gear up for this H2k ROCCAT matchup.
Yeah, and looking at the games yesterday, ROCCAT lost on 30 minutes to the Unicorns. They died in the laning phase, and they had nothing to do in the game. H2k, complete different story. Ran over elements. Actually, same way that ROCCAT lost was the way H2k won. So clearly, early game now for ROCCAT and Ducky, the coach, needs to be a lot better.
Yeah, very, very, very quick games between the two of them. Yeah. They were about an hour together, and that was just insanely quick at how fast their opponents were able to roll over. So H2k, they're on that trend. We'll see if they can continue it here against Team ROCCAT. First ban on the board is going to be the Nidalee takeaway.
So taking it away from Jankos, we saw Unicorns of Love yesterday first pick it, and also make sure Jankos couldn't get his hands on what we now consider the best early game jungler, at least, in terms of the current meta.
He is undefeated on it, so I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Also, Jarvan off the board, and the Zed ban.
It's funny actually, because teams normally ban Zed against Rio, but now it's H2k banning it against Nukeduck, so we want to try and still get him away from these assassins. It also opens up a bit for a LeBlanc pick if Kassadin gets banned, and then H2k can go for that one if they want to get some lane dominance again against Nukeduck, who has been fairly weak, honestly, and you have been able to get some kills and pressure him in the lane.
Junglers and mid laners so far exclusively, but you can see the coaches there, Ducky and Prawley, talking it out as the ban ticks down. Looks like they do take the LeBlanc away from Nukeduck. He hadn't had a win on that yet.
So that shows to me H2k has a very specific first pick in mind, and they don't want ROCCAT to take the LeBlanc as the first rotation, because they could have banned Kassadin and then there was no counters left because Zed was already gone from the side of H2k. So I think that's why they ban it and just play it safe. And now obviously for them, if they want like a Rek'Sai in the jungle, it would be open, but Gnar, the big deal in the top lane, could be the go-to pick. Lissandra as well. I mean, there's two good top laners here for Udamne.
Yeah, and the mid pool's been significantly depleted here with that cast-in ban away, so H2k definitely taking their time about this last one, but I am curious to see what they do pick up. There is the Rek'Sai possibility, as you mentioned. Gnar is still up. There's a lot of strong picks available, not just in the top lane.
Yeah, and we haven't actually seen Lulix play Rek'Sai at all. It doesn't seem to be his kind of champion. at least from just judging in the past few games, where instead Oduamne has been also one of the big carries. So getting a comfort pick for him and one of the top picks in the game, the Gnar in this case, I think that's a smart idea.
Certainly makes a lot of sense, and the Lissandra is also kind of a no-brainer in this situation. Although ROCCAT have not found a win in the game, they did pick that one up for Overpow. Looks like they will lock it in nonetheless, as well as the Lee Sin.
Yeah, so ROCCAT going back to some early aggression in terms of their jungle pick-up for Jankos. With Nidalee being banned, he takes the second best in terms of pure early damage you can provide, but Lee Sin has somewhat fallen down in terms of like the tier list of junglers, but now with Jarvan and Nidalee being banned, suddenly he obviously comes back to the top, actually taking it over the Rek'Sai, so really looking for some early aggression and also a Sightstone, which is where Lee Sin always will have the advantage. He's probably the jungler who's the most efficient with a Sightstone on him, and that's what you can use to kind of take over the map with him, which we know ROCCAT likes to do.
On H2k's side, haven't revealed much, of course, with just this Gnar. And they're thinking about the Rek'Sai. It's definitely one of those higher tier picks, but as you mentioned, we haven't seen Lulex on it before. I'm curious to see if they do lock this one in, how they perform. The Sivir makes a lot of sense in this particular case. They had a fantastic game on it yesterday, 6-0-3. Hjarnan was able to pull it off, and we'll see if it does anything close to that again.
I'm a little bit surprised about Rek'Sai, actually. Typically, you want some sort of hard engage when you're running Rek'Sai, but in this case, because they have the Sivir, you have that mobility now for all your champions, and that's what they're going to use to engage the fights. But Rek'Sai into Lee Sin, after the recent nerfs here at 5.1, 5.2, Rek'Sai has actually lost quite a lot of her early game damage, and if Lee Sin now gets to jump on her, he's actually going to win that one-on-one. So we're going to have to see if Jankos is going to try and sit in the jungle of H2k early on, trying to apply some pressure, and not allow Lulex to go around, setting up all his tunnels here and look for these early ganks in the lanes, which we know Rek'Sai can do really well.
Over for ROCCAT, pondering their bot lane right now. Well, I did have a successful game on Caitlyn. Do think this makes a little bit more sense than the hyper carries he's been trying to play with lately. The whole protect the Woolite just hasn't really worked out, and now you've got a very safe lane, very easy to disengage with the Janna.
Yeah, very, very safe lane all around, and Janna against a very mobile composition as well. So once Sivir pops the ulti and you're going for the first engage through the Gnar, the Rek'Sai, you knock them away and obviously disengage the entire fight. So leaves a lot of options here for ROCCAT. You already have some hard engage through the Lissandra, you have some disengage with the Janna, and obviously a very strong lane for ROCCAT in terms of one-on-one with Lissandra top lane and the 2-on-2 in the bottom lane. So I wouldn't be surprised to see H2k considering a lane swap.
But certainly we're considering something there. Crowd lets out a disappointed sigh with the Teemo Zillion. Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense in this particular case. We'll see what they do end up locking in at the very end. Still looking for Ryu's pickup as well as Kasing's support. We've only seen Kasing on the Thresh. It's still available. He had a fantastic game on it, but he's going to instead lock in the Annie. So Sivir Annie, we saw it opening weeks, and it really, in the right hands, it was devastating.
Yeah. Again, a very, very strong team fighting composition from H2k. A lot of mobility, and obviously the Sivir ulti really helps Annie as well get the right engage, even if she doesn't have flash ready. So H2k just running a very standard European combo. You have such a good wombo combo team fight, and you have a lot of mobility coming in as well. I do really feel, though, that ROCCAT, in terms of the laning phase with this Janna Caitlyn, I mean, Caitlyn is one of the hard counters to Sivir in the lane, so H2k should be looking for a lane swap here. Get past the early game stages, start really scaling up on your Orianna in that mid lane, and then look for these big team fights once you have 2 items completed on your mid laner.
Certainly on a roll with converting their laning into a mid-game power spike. We'll see if that trend continues here. ROCCAT now ticking down the timer and thinking about this Maokai for Overpow. I think it would work quite well, considering how many mid laners have been banned to put Nuke Duck on the Lissandra.
Yeah, and also Maokai against the Sivir is a fantastic thing for the Maokai, because Sivir has no chance of killing him in the late game. Orianna as well, she's not a tank killer, so he's going to be able to dive onto the back line here and stay alive for such a long time, just locking down 2 carries at once. I really, really like the composition from ROCCAT. I feel like they have answers to nearly everything H2k can do through the Janna, obviously. You have the engage with the Lissandra and the Maokai as well, and you have strong lanes all around, except now, obviously, The one-on-one Gnar can do really well against the Maokai, so it's going to be about the dual lane if H2k wants to swap it or not.
Right, that's the big question. And on ROCCAT's side, the big question mark for them is, can they execute it? Because, again, we've given them all this praise. Teams have been giving them these massive props for being able to come up huge in scrims and just perform incredibly well. But now with the scoreline they're sitting at, with the way they were beaten yesterday, it's a little troubling. Can they execute? This is definitely what looks like a more comfortable composition for them, though.
Yeah, when you talk to the teams about ROCCAT, they all say early game is not a problem at all for them. They do really well in scrims. They can beat teams on 20 minutes. But then in the LCS, we see this very passive play style instead. I really feel like as a team, they got to just be more comfortable when they're on stage. And actually, don't be afraid to make plays. If you can do it in scrims, you can do it on the stage itself. And then we can maybe see ROCCAT be more aggressive in the early game.
Yeah, just got to relax, got to let it go. But the lineups are locked in now, so tell us who you think is going to win this game. Tweet at LL Esports using the hashtag H2KWin or ROCWin. We're going to go ahead and check on those results in-game. The crowd is hyped. They're getting ready as we load up onto Summoner's Rift. It is, of course, Week 4, Day 2, H2K taking on ROCCAT.
And again, two teams here really trying to break into that top 3 in Europe. Elements has lost a few games. Unicorns are now tied with them, and ROCCAT and H2K are just behind them. They really want to take this win here, try and create some distance, and move closer towards the top spots in the league.
It's definitely a fight for that side of the table. These two teams, very different play styles, though, we've seen come out of them.
Oh, yeah.
And ROCCAT are going to have to make some really strong early game pressure here to prevent this mid-game team fight power spike, but it is so troubling to deal with the number of weapons that this H2K side has.
Yeah, that really is going to be the big thing for ROCCAT, and I feel like we have said it before. In this case, you got to make sure you don't fall too far behind in the mid game, and you get to your late game point where the Maokai and the Caitlyn can really start shining. Otherwise, H2K can just run over you. Lissandra is good in terms of early mid game pressure. Falls off a little bit once people get QSS and cleanse. Mikhail's in the late game parts. But for now, looking like H2K actually going to stay in the bottom side of the map. Remember yesterday, they got the crooks and then went straight in to play very aggressive in the lane. Elements didn't expect it for some reason and actually pushed a wave and ended up dying for it, giving up a first blood that made Jarnan so strong he could just roam around the map and take down every single turret. ROCCAT is not going to do the same. They're actually swapping to top lane. I feel like this is because they're expecting the H2K swap, and they want to try and like blind swap against them to trick them and then get the 2-on-2 on the top side. Won't work.
Yeah, it looks like just going to be spending a little bit of time waiting there. As we've been very impressed just off that one game with the way Jarnan and Kasing seem to have synced up together quite well.
Yeah.
And a lot of it was down to Element's misplays, but all the same, still, when you come in just out of the blue, situation like that, just trying to fit into a team, it worked incredibly well for them. They're going to do the Krugs again. Now there is not going to be anybody to greet them in the bottom lane as we see the lane swap completed with the double jungling.
Yeah, and you can see how H2K actually were expecting ROCCAT to be on the bottom side with the Caitlyn and Janet. That's why they're doing crooks, because it also means now you can't freeze the wave, seeing as you weren't there at 155 when the minions came into the lane itself. So they're going to have to build up a big wave and push it, which means that Lulex and Odoamne should go down towards his bottom side and try and force Overpower away. Otherwise, he's going to get a lot of farm under this turret, seeing as it's not being frozen.
Go ahead and toss that sapling in there. So yeah, the freeze up in the top side was completed. Kasing's going to try to chase Overpower away. Fire does work quite well on trees.
It does, even if you're a little child. But Overpower needs to be careful he doesn't push away too much himself with the sapling. But we do see Lulex and Odoamne now moving slowly, doing a full clear of the jungle before they go down, and a lot of damage to Overpower. And actually, let's see how much he pushed the lane beforehand. It is still going to go towards him, just one extra minion for H2K, so not exactly enough at this point to really make a massive freeze.
Kasing is getting bloodthirsty to start this one off. Now, Lulex and Odoamne, they're moving in position, and we're going to see Jankos and Overpower here.
Already
they know where they're at.
Tempest.
Yep, popping the ward down. That was what's needed. Overpower and Jankos smelled something's up, but they're going to have a rough time for a little bit.
Yeah, and right now, because ROCCAT has two guys in the bottom lane and H2K did a full jungle clear, so Overpower is getting very close to level 3 and you can't really go and dive him anymore. It actually means Overpower is going to get a lot of farm in this lane swap, while Odoamne had been forced to double jungle with Lulex, so He's actually going to fall slightly behind, especially because the wave is being frozen and Vander is still sitting in this top lane, just waiting for him to return. Notice what Jankos did as well. Recall as soon as he realized the dive wasn't going to happen, because now Overpower is actually high enough level to stay alive. He goes straight towards the top side of the map, and he's ready now to go over and zone out Odoamne if he shows up alone in this top lane.
Speaking of Odoamne,
there he is.
Going to be making his rounds up there. Vander hanging out in the brush as well.
Jankos should go straight there after the Crooks.
Looks like that's what he's on his way to do.
He's on his way.
Yeah, but it's definitely going to be tough if they decide they want to try to pull off the dive just because of the Mega Gnar possibilities. Not been able to build up any rage anyways, though, just because can't get much damage.
No, and also Lulix is on his way, so ROCCAT want to play it a bit more safe, warding up the river first. Jankos is still moving in. Now they're going to spot Lulix and realize they can actually dive them, and therefore a lot of farm being picked up.
Though. Lulix actually able to pack away decently well at Lulix's health bar. He's going to be backing off. So once again, Odoamne is a little bit isolated, but Jankos isn't thinking about that. He's got crab on the mind.
We saw him go to the lane, and he was ready, had it just been Odoamne on his own, to actually go in and force him away. But as soon as Lulix showed himself, it actually turned into a very passive and defensive lane swap, where you've been defending your own top laner and therefore preventing the dives, and nobody's really punished each other too much. Both top laners have been able to get in the lanes and catch quite a lot of CS. Should be a small lead though for Overpower in terms of experience.
I think this passive early game is definitely going to be what ROCCAT likes. It's their comfort zone. If they can do it, they tend to. And they do have pretty decent scaling into the later edges of the game outside of Jankos.
Yeah, the problem is, however, when you do a passive lane swap and you have Caitlyn, you're going to get to a mid-game point where you were never able to use your lane bully, which is one of your strongest points, because again, you're sitting there and it takes a long time to take down the turret. What we have seen over in China with Caitlyn in a lane swap is you fast push the tower. Every single time you get the tower down, you swap back down to the 2-on-2 dual lane where you now have a BF sword ready, and you just bully that lane, now take another turret, and that's how you get your lead and trying to avoid this mid-game, which you are going to be weaker in. And in this case, ROCCAT build up a very, very slow wave, so they won't take a fast tower, but they will be able to get this one. There's plenty of gold as well for Woolite to get a BF sword, because 55 minions if you don't miss a single one, and you can actually go back and get a BF sword. So he's going to be more than fine in that case. He's just going to end up at this mid-game point where the Sivir can do more than the Caitlyn.
Yeah, and one weakness, of course, of doing this lane swap is right there. You give up the dragon control. There's no one in the area to try and contest this as early as it is. Teleport being spent by Overpower just to get back to lane, but with Hjarnan standing there, they're not going to be very well aware of this one. Tower will go down in the top in just a moment. There it goes. Yeah. And this is going to be, however, an H2k Dragon.
And notice how ROCCAT made sure the tower killed every single minion before they took it down. So now the two waves actually face each other and they're equal. 6 minions against 6. And so you don't get a push down towards H2k, which could have ended up in Odoamne just freezing it at his own turret. Now the Dragon is gone and denying a lot of farm from Overpower. So instead the two waves are going to be dead even and can actually just have Overpower go up there and pick up the farm. He had already used his teleport earlier, so he has to run from base. Odoamne will be there first trying to push it in.
Opens up an opportunity finally for him to get a little bit more of that farm. Going the very tanky Gnar route to begin it. No surprises there. We haven't really talked much about this mid lane, but typically when you have an Orianna lane, especially facing down Alessandra, there's not as much you're going to be concerned about in the early game. Neither of the junglers really fixated on ganking either. It's really been more of a control the vision, control around the map, rather than trying to make an impact in the lanes.
Yeah, we do see Nuke Duck go for very early Hourglass. The large rock being picked up as the first item on Alessandra, so really getting ready for early team fights. We know how important it is. He's going to be one of the main engagers together with the Maokai to kind of dive in onto the Orianna or the Sivir, trying to lock them down before they can use all this mobility that they do have between those two champions. So we're going to go for a very early Hourglass, while obviously Overpower has again this mid-game weakness because of the Rod of Ages, needs to get stacked up, and he's going to get it fairly late due to being in a lane swap. Notice how far behind the top laners are compared to the rest in terms of farm.
Going to be a while before they're comfortable getting involved in these fights, so not so much Wet Noodle. Overpower takes quite a lot of damage as Odoamne goes back. Too many Gnar actually just throws quite a lot of boomerang shots at him, but yeah, it's going to be a while before those two are particularly useful for the team fights.
That's true. We're gonna see Nard just keep being a bully against the Maokai, and a whole lot Overpower can do. Try and pick up some farm. Which is gonna mean his tower is gonna take quite a lot of damage, which we saw H2k use yesterday against Elements. Just poke them down, the towers down in the lane, and then you use the Yarnan on Sivir to roam between the lanes and just take them with the fast push. In this game, however, Yarnan will be a bit more busy dealing with that Caitlyn in the 2-on-2 lane. We see it now, BF sword and a long sword actually for Woolite. So 100% focus on combat stats in the lane, not mobility.
A little bit of extra damage. Pretty close together in farm, but really it didn't have too much of a challenge in either way when you have that lane swap. And you can bully around however you want. Ryu goes for a little bit of a roam, but he's going to get spotted by that pink ward, and he just turns around 180 degrees.
It's a bit of a random roam by an Orianna in the late game, early game. We normally don't see that too often. Opa is fairly low, so he could have maybe gone for a kill, but the pink ward spotted him. And he will be fine in the mid lane as well. So we've gone back now to standard lanes, but Dragon for H2k, and again, they dodged this Caitlyn lane early on. So they can actually be very happy with the lane swap and how it went.
Oh, make something happen. Not quite yet. There's nothing really to take on that side. But Nuktuk was certainly thinking about going in. Lulex, yeah, now he's going to be heading back to the farm.
And Yanka's actually going to skirmish his Saber on Lee Sin. I haven't been the biggest fan of it. We've seen a lot of junglers go for it and not really use it at all. You give up a lot of early pressure by not having the Stalker's Blade, or like map pressure in terms of not having the Trailblazer, where obviously you can use your Smite on the Raptor camp, which is what you want to do, and you just clear a ward and you can farm a bit easier and always be fairly healthy. With the skirmishes, you kind of again have to save that Smite for your gank itself, and it just doesn't offer a whole lot before we go late game, and those 20% damage reduction debuffs you can put onto AD carry, or maybe the Orianna can be useful for you.
Yeah, I'm curious to see where Yankos ends up utilizing this. He did sell the Ranger's Trailblazer to pick that skirmishers up, and Lulex just completing his tunnel system here as he heads over to the Raptor camp. Meanwhile, in the top lane, Overpower's going to be backing away. Decent farm advantage for Odoamne, but he's got no tower still to fall back to.
No, and again, Overpower just falling further and further behind after they got into this one-on-one. No Rod of Ages yet. The standard time is around 13 minutes.
And he's just got a Catalyst.
Yeah, that's going to be delayed quite a lot. His goal at the moment is only on 75, so he just spent everything he had. That's going to take a while for him to get stacked up, and we even see Nuke Dog actually not going for Outlaws first, just had enough gold for that large rod, so one of the early power spike, and then just going Morel Normicon as actually the first fully completed item for him.
Yankos was trying to apply the Jurassic Park strategy there, where you can't see it if there's no movement.
And this game again, or this early game, is really why we don't see too many junglers still use Lee Sin. Especially if you look at the likes of NA, where Vi was played a lot suddenly. Yankos hasn't been able to make any plays early on. We had the lane swap obviously, and he hasn't been able to pull off any ganks. This might be the first one though.
They're certainly going to try for it. Ryu though, yeah, he's got some backup.
It won't be. But this is where again, in terms of pure team fighting, Rek'Sai is going to be a lot better than a Lee Sin. So Yankos is going to be more about peeling in these late game team fights. And obviously again, just trying to tank up as much damage as possible. But that's going to be about it for him.
And it's weird that he's picked up the skirmishers in that particular case. You'd think the Chilling Smite would have helped to peel off just a little bit the slowing effect. It's not going to be able to be applied this time around. Lulex clears out that ward. 7 seconds on the Dragon now. That team is really keen to set up too quickly for it. Scuttle Crab control for ROCCAT. Crowd is loving those ward kills.
Just want people to kill something in this game. A lot more passive from H2k after they weren't able to just win the laning phase like they did yesterday. And we know ROCCAT likes to play this style. So no real surprise for them. Notice how also Odoamne, he's ready for this Dragon fight. He just got Warmogs as his very first item, so quite a tanky spike for him. Megana is down, however. So they want that back up, and a lot of wards being killed.
The name of the game is Vision Denial right now. A lot of pinks being spended out to make sure that can happen. Will-eyed Vander and try to push in on the bottom side. Vander's actually backing away. Overpower has really had some trouble fighting for this farm. Odoamne still chasing him, pushing him back every chance, just chipping away at the bark on the tree.
It's kind of fun how little action we have seen. None of the supports have been roaming in the lanes off. They both stayed in their lane just to try and deny a little bit from the enemy top laner. Normally Annie is fantastic at roaming early on. Even Janna can actually do it. But no, there's no ganks in the mid lane or anything. The junglers have just been there to secure farm as well from the top laners. And because H2k got the first dragon, now got the second one. And again, we're getting towards this mid game point where Woolite doesn't really want to look for fights. He wants to try and fast push down a few turrets, but that's not going to happen. The laning phase is still going, so H2k currently can be very happy.
Yeah. Despite the fact that Kasing does take a big ace in the hole, Kjarnan still fairly healthy, spell shields away the Peacemaker. It just seems like H2k, they're not particularly keen on fighting it out right now, even though they should have a pretty decent power spike going forward. And they also continue to try to just get in and take a numbers advantage, a quick gank, but there's so many wards here that H2k is just clearing them out and walking away.
Yeah, but again, they do have to be a little bit careful. They don't allow Woolite and Vander here to take down too many of these outer turrets. The first one is already gone. This is why you want that Caitlyn into Sivir. There's nothing she can do against you. Now they can just swap to the mid lane and just have only the Orianna to try and wave play against Alessandra, against the Caitlyn and a Janna. That's not going to happen for H2k. So last outer turret in this mid lane should be the next target, especially with the dragon being gone. And also Average Blade picked off here by Woolite.
This thing
is towards static shift. They want to go for the first gank now towards Nuke Duck.
Well, you know the Rek'Sai scream. That's happening
here too.
Oh, he's going to wander a little bit too close, and there goes the Tibbers, the Shockwave, and the first blood. It goes to Ryu. Well done.
Well done here. Just sitting and waiting. They actually placed the ward after the Tibbers went down, but they saw Jankos move over there, and then simply destroyed him. Nice little roam by Kasing. The first time we see him really move out of his lane.
Yeah, waits for the perfect moment to strike and drops the bear. They combo a couple of ults, but it was definitely well worth the first blood. And now Kasing hanging out in the mid lane with Ryu, waiting for the mini wave to arrive to push it in.
And we see already Woolite in this mid lane.
Ooh!
It's going to be the next turret for him.
It's quite the distance there.
Ryu is double buffed. Already got Athene's completed for him. And Odo Amna actually took the top lane turret. So tower starting to fall, should open up the map a bit and for potential fights.
Yeah, they seem to be a bit energized by this one, but maybe they've overstepped their bounds, or maybe Overpow is the one getting pushed in. Still not quite tanky enough, and they're keying off on him despite the Vander ult. Now they're going to turn attention to the Janna. Lulex, they have the damage, and they manage to pick up a support 2-0 on the kill score. And H2k have started to flex their muscles.
I'm really not sure why ROCCAT are looking for a fight there onto Odo Amna. He's very tanky already. Nuke Duck was in the bottom lane as well. Not going in on that claw. Poking away, but this turret now is going to take a hell of a beating.
May not last too long. Woolite has just got to get the hell out of dodge. He's not going to even try to defend it. Picks off. Now they're waiting in the brush here, ROCCAT, to maybe try. No, they're not going to go for it. I feel like they've been a little cowed by this aggression that H2k has started to demonstrate.
And look at all the gold here for H2k after getting top lane tower, mid lane tower, 2 kills as well. Everyone above 1,000 gold in the bank. Back to spend it, and now again, keep pressuring your advantage. Bottom lane turret is the last outer one. That could be your next goal, or you can just ignore that and start pushing straight up towards the mid lane, take control of the jungle of ROCCAT, the top side. Dragons have gone to you already, and it's not going to spawn for a few minutes. Get in that jungle here again, force ROCCAT to lose a lot of farm. And if they want to fight you, you're happy to simply say, let's go.
Let's go indeed. And Vander goes on. Bit of a scouting mission, finds his ward. 30 gold for his trouble. They're going to grab a crab as well. But while Lulex has been instrumental in the few moves we've had around this map, Jankos, he really hasn't. He's tried to get involved and he's tried to set up ganks, but
has he?
H2k, he's tried, not successfully.
Okay, true. You're right. Right.
He just seems to be wandering at this point a little aimlessly. They're not really going for objectives. ROCCAT is just sort of playing this out. I don't want to say passive because that doesn't seem to do it justice.
No, again, one of the reasons I guess he's picking this in is just for that side step.
Oh!
Yanen here.
Yep,
he's
spell shield is burned on the hunt. Nuke Duck flashing tomb. And he claws his way out. 1, 2, 3.
Nice little pick by Nuke Duck. We see all the wards on the bottom side here by ROCCAT. And Nuke Duck was unspotted. Picks up the first kill for them. And actually Righteous Glory for Overpower. So no Rod of Ages here. He wants that extra mobility when he's engaging onto H2k's side. And the very mobile composition they do have. It will make him slightly weaker. A bit squishy, doesn't have the same damage he would with a Rod of Ages, but he's then sacrificing himself for the team and the chance to actually engage in. We're gonna have to see if he can stay alive. Again, it's gonna make him fairly squishy in terms of these mid-game fights.
Yeah, I think they're turning Jankos into the tank in this particular situation. Makes a lot of sense anyways, at least in fairly common build as Jankos tag teams. That he does not connect on the Sonic Wave, however, and Ottawamne is actually able to just push them both back for a moment as he goes Mega Gnar and walks away for free.
And obviously Overpower still, I mean, shouldn't be kidding ourselves. He's going to be extremely tanky. I mean, 500 HP on that Righteous Glory. So we're just nitpicking here. Typically we do see still Rod of Ages, especially when you're like diving onto 2 carries who can't really kill a tank. You just want to invest as many resources as possible onto your Maokai. He gets really, really tanky 2 items very early, and he can just stay in these fights forever. He's on to Ottawamne here.
Yep, and he has found some damage. Jankos is ready for the tag team once again, but Overpow's actually backed away. There we go. Flash Ottawamne, though. He might be backed into a bit of a corner here. They've got the damage. Overpow just keeps on moving and moving back with the Mega Gnar timing. Ottawamne, can he get away? Dodging the Q again.
Again, remember, this Righteous Glory here is making you weaker in these small fights. You have no AP at all, so no damage coming from Overpow. Ends up dying.
And this is horrible
1v2.
timing.
And at the same time here, rest of H2k said fine, Jankos on the top side. We're just going to take this bottom lane turret, the last auto turret left in the game. We will take that for free. Simple for them. You get kills, you get towers, you get dragon. I mean, just notice again here, Overpower onto Ottawamne. He has barely any damage to him. There's a Hex Drink already, and the Warmog's the first item from Ottawamne. And Jankos joining in. Really not had a good day on this Lee Sin. Just notice, Mega Gnar gets popped, Hex Drink, shield, everything. And there's the extra HP and the kill.
That's all he needed. And yeah, Jankos
look brutal,
not
man.
been able to
Into
connect
the
on
wall.
the fuse. It's just so frustrating in that situation. Now another dragon picked up by H2k after all of that as well. Everything's going right for them at this point.
Yeah, finally, once we hit the mid-game point, really start to pick up the pace. Get kills. We saw Kasing roaming. All the outer turrets are gone for ROCCAT side. And there's really no reason to stop from H2k. Just keep looking for these fights. You have a lot of engage options because of the Sivir with the Annie lined up. Ottawamne looking for another fight against Overpower.
Ooh, Gnar backwards, and he goes Mini Gnar actually. Even though the Vengeful Maelstrom is on, he's really making Overpower regretting really trying to take the one-on-one here. It's a very, very slow fight. Flash.
Slow.
He's not going to be enough though. Twisted advance back on in, but Ottawamne should have enough damage to polish him off.
And Ottawamne here again, really just looking for every single one-on-one fight. Overpower can't do anything but try and run away. And Nuclear now setting up for pick, but this is one of the big things about Rek'Sai. You can run around the enemy jungle, and you see it again, the Tempest here, the small circles under ROCCAT. So despite not having a ward on them, he knows they're trying to set up for a pick, and he just backs away and stays alive.
Now they are 5 members in this bottom side, starting to push through the tower pretty quickly. There's not a lot of reaction. The Janna shield is hardly going to be enough. The tornado does come out, but the turret is just about done, and that is going to be it. They drop the Tibbers on Nuke Duck, and he's gone before Vander can even heal him, who has to flash himself. Chilling Smite, they're chasing Woolite away, and he can't even get back to the base gate. There we go. Jankos is going to get the safeguard. Lulex pushed back, but now they're onto the inhibitor turret. The switch has been flipped, and H2k have gone up to 11. They find Overpow, a little bit more damage there, and they're able to take him down. ROCCAT are just getting so shut down. Inhibitor 1. It looked like it wasn't going to be a 23-minute one, but it is, Deficio.
It is indeed. H2k looking very, very good. And just to correct myself from before, it's of course not the Tempest, it's the Tremor from the Rek'Sai.
Tremors indeed.
Tremors indeed. So let's see the fight again. It's on to Nuke Duck. He actually used the claw, so he has no escape tools now except for maybe flashing away. But that's a nice engage by Kasing. Just a new guy on the team. Flashing in, making the plays, not staying back, not playing passive. It was the same yesterday against Elements. Kasing has really done a good job in his first few games for H2k, and obviously just pushing in. Rio as well, feeling very confident with his Hourglass, and no damage at all for H2k at this point. So Caitlyn is weak, Maokai is weak, inhibitors are gone.
That's really all you can say for that one. H2k have really been turning up the heat, although ROCCAT is trying to find an answer in this mid lane. They've got a minion wave at their back, but Ryu and Kasing are both here. And now the Rek'Sai Scream makes you wonder if you've cleared all the tunnels out of your jungle. Never fear, you have, but Lulex is still in hot pursuit of the crab, though. Got seafood on his mind.
Gotta get that. 80 gold. Actually, 84 gold for him this time around. And notice again about how Odoamne and Lulex, with all this gold they've been able to pick up, especially Odoamne with these one-on-one kills and even 1 versus 2 kills, he's so tanky. Even going for more than Mortis. He's feeling that confident. There's not enough damage on Rocket side to take him down. Woolite is BT and even a last whisper almost at this point away from being able to do anything in these team fights. And he's not going to hit that point because H2k, they keep playing aggressive. They take the Baron as well now. Rocket way too slow to react.
Yeah, they come in just a little bit too late. Overpow is going to get knocked against the wall and taken down. Ryu adding another to his kill score. Woolite just backing away with the net, but the house lands on his head, and that's going to give you a bit of a headache.
And just keep pushing up. You'll notice their super minions in the bot lane. H2k, no reason to stop now. Get another turret.
Not anything ROCCAT has been able to do to hold this team back. The turret starts to fall pretty low. Nuke Duck does not take the glacial path in. Seems like a suicide mission is this point. They grab another. The super minions now pushing on the Nexus turret. ROCCAT are not responding to this. They're still trying to man the front while they're being flanked by the minions.
Yeah, and again, H2k just taking every single outer turret. They know ROCCAT can't do anything to defend it. There's only 3 guys here now. That's not going to help you. Kissing looking for another engage.
Yeah, if they can get it. The super minions, or the Baron minions, I should say, are really knocking down the front here. Jankos does manage to scare the rest of H2k off, but it seems to just be a temporary reprieve. With another dragon coming up in 45 seconds. There's still super minions on this bottom side. They're dragging ROCCAT everywhere.
They are back to base. Shop, go straight to the dragon, get the 4th one of the game, even very early because of that lane swap where they got the first dragon. This is gonna be such a hard game for ROCCAT to win now.
Yeah, the
again,
climb back
thank you, Captain Obvious, but
it's gonna be difficult. I know
it's gonna be. It's nearly impossible at this point because you gotta hold off till now 40 minutes at least, and you have that potential 5th dragon coming before that. You have obviously H2k not just sitting back and waiting. I like what ROCCAT is actually doing now, trying to look for a pick, trying to surprise someone in a bush where you don't expect it. Lulex is going to face check it.
Yeah, he's actually going to go down in just a moment. There he goes. They spend quite a lot on him. ROCCAT does manage to come up with that play and jungler off the table with the live dragon.
And notice how ROCCAT didn't actually move while they were standing in the bush, so the tremor from Lulex didn't manage to spot them. So obviously you have to move around before you can see it. So just stood there, waited, and actually got a dragon for it. That was the best play possible for ROCCAT right here. Set up a trap, get the dragon, delay that 5th one, but now you can kind of go back and you got to defend your base.
Yeah, and they're going to lose this center turret as well. There's really not much they could have done in that situation anyways. So best play possible, but they've still sunk themselves into this situation. This inhibitor turret's starting to get chunked down pretty low too. Jankos overpowered. They can't really frontline this team at all. Actually, the tower, it's just barely going to go. The shockwave didn't go anywhere, Ryu. The Tibbers is down though. Kasing is as well. They find overpower as Vander spends the Monsoon Flash as well away from the rest of the team. But this inhibitor is going to be forfeit.
There was only 4 players from H2k here. Of course, no ulti for Nuke Duck in that fight here. And while the shockwave missed, it just shows how far ahead H2k are. You can miss your shockwaves, you're going to be 4 guys, and yet you win the fight and you destroy the enemy base.
They're so far ahead, they don't need to rely on this Wombo combo that they've got, and that's still in the back pocket, even in the worst of situations. Last inhibitor taken down. ROCCAT are scrambling inside their base. Actually, the other one just comes back up, but they don't really need it anyways. Woolite, he's going to be smited down. Lulex kicked away. Nexus Tower 1 is going to fall. Here comes Jankos to try and save the day, but I don't think he's gonna make the super play. Inhibitor already, they're working it down again, and that is another 3 taken off the board. Overpow, trying to be the hero himself. He's gonna twist it advance. Lulex has to flash away from this one. Ryu Odoamne all very low. Woolite is gonna pick up Yarn, and maybe they can find a turnaround here, but their base is in shambles. They need the shutdown. They need to keep finding kills, but it's still only a 2-for-1.
Only a 2-for-1, might not be over yet. Notice Kasing on the minimap. Being pinged away now, playing this mobility Annie. You see distortion boots, and obviously a distortion enchant, and obviously talisman being picked up for him. So really just putting so much focus on buffing up every single guy in the team to speed them up and keep looking for fights and catching out ROCCAT.
H2k have had their momentum somewhat arrested here, but only after they've been able to take all those inhibitors. You know, for a moment, Deficio, it looked like we could be in for a pretty long game. But the way that H2k are playing this one, they're eyeballing what they were able to do yesterday in that 30 or so minute.
Yeah, H2k were really just waiting for that mid-game to get one item completed on every single character and then simply start roaming with Kasing, take down these turrets here, and ROCCAT were not ready at all. They got caught out. They took a teamfight as well in the jungle. That cost them another tower in the mid lane. And suddenly H2k were just so far ahead. And we talked about how they have so much mobility and such a strong mid-game through just like the Gnar, the Rek'Sai, and the Sivir together. And they really used it well to push down ROCCAT. And this is exactly what happened yesterday for ROCCAT against Unicorns of Love. They fall behind and they simply have no response once we get to the mid-game points.
I'm glad you mentioned the mobility because it's really been hurting ROCCAT. And this time around, in the last couple games in general, I think we've definitely seen some evolution from this squad. Odoamne has been really well together with the team, and now Nukeduck is trying to make the play on him. He's going to go down, and they're still going to find Kasing. Finally, they invest so heavily into picking off the Annie. They lose Nukeduck, they lose Overpow. I can't even speak how fast these kills are going. Goodbye, Jankos, Woolite running back to Fountain, staying alive just barely as he's trying to get those fantasy points, but the Nexus is already done. 30 minutes, 16 seconds, and H2k stack another win on the board.
2-0 now for H2k. They start out week 1, lose both games. Next week 2-0, then they lose both games again, and now 2-0 in week 4. What a great week for them.
The trend continues. H2k, yeah, another quick game. That actually...
31 minutes yesterday against Element.
That beat their record from yesterday. Yeah, they did it in 30 minutes, 16 seconds. Smiles all around, and Kasing, the new guy on the team, you can't get much better than a 2-0 start.
And we had this talk here about H2k having some problems in terms of shot calling. Beforehand, there were too many people trying to call what was going to happen, and they didn't always agree. Now, after they made this change, and Kasing has to come in as support, we don't know if he's making those calls or maybe it's just relying more on Odoamne, who we know is a very aggressive shot caller. He wants to go in, he wants to fight. We've really seen H2k push their advantage 2 games in a row now against Elements and ROCCAT, 2 very, very strong teams, but also 2 teams who struggle in the early game. And that's where H2k has taken full advantage of that and now win the games.
Indeed they have. Now, it seemed like in their losses it was always trouble trying to close this out, but this time not so much an issue. You see Coach Prawley in the background, and he knows his team deserves some congratulations in that situation. They weren't without the flaws, but for ROCCAT, going 0-2 now on the week, after being so vaunted, after being so talked up, it's got to be rough, and we saw it yesterday in the post-game.
Look at that, man.
Yeah,
Prawley's so
happy,
happy. So happy with his
They
players.
well earned it. That was a great
game from them. Smiles all around. Pick and ban phase was good again from H2k. It's not like ROCCAT had a bad pick and ban phase. They actually had a very strong composition. But first of all, the lane swap happened. I'm 99% sure that ROCCAT were planning on getting a 2-2 on the top side. So they were expecting H2k to swap up there, and they wanted to like bait them into it and then find them up there in the 2-2. That didn't work out for them, and then they actually froze the lane. So you got to that point where you swap back with the Caitlyn, where you only have maybe 2 minutes to actually dominate the laning phase. They did get a tower from it, but that's it. Then you go into mid-game, and that's where, again, H2k would be stronger. Because of this Caitlyn needed to scale up, because of the Maokai needed to scale up as well. And suddenly, because you had the lane swap happening and it took such a long time, they were just too weak when actually the fights really started. And that's where we saw the roams. We saw, obviously, the very, very aggressive, I wouldn't call it tower dives, but at least trying to find some picks around these turrets here so they could kill them and then go straight for a tower after from ROCCAT. And suddenly you have such a massive goal lead. You had all the dragons as well for H2k in the early game. Game completely snowballed out of control.
Yeah, second time against ROCCAT too. And the second time for H2k. They really have managed to hit on this formula here in this situation. And for H2k, you know, coming up with not just this win yesterday, of course, win over Elements. I mean, a fantastic, fantastic play for them. And really, I mean, they seem to be on an up and up. Yes, of course, we say 2 wins, 2 losses, 2 wins, 2 losses. Still, it's hard to fault them in those particular games this week because they looked maybe not flawless. They did give up a few things. They did get a little overzealous. They were chased back. But yeah, about as close as we've seen so far. So yeah, really big props to them. And I feel like they've patched a lot of those holes, and they're definitely making a run for that top 3, top 4 slots currently in the European LCS. So what does ROCCAT really need to work on, though, other than just not executing on their plan? Because that just seems to be the big issue.
Again, it's very simple for ROCCAT. The early game is just, it's not good enough. That's just how it is. They're not playing it well enough. They're way too passive. Jankers used to be a jungler who would always look for ganks early on, and he would try and snowball his lanes, if you look back to last year. This year, we barely see him do anything. He shows himself in the lane. He's, you know, I don't really want to go for any ganks here. Then he backs away, goes back to his jungle. If you pick Lee Sin, you have to make something happen in the early game. Otherwise, there's no reason to pick him over so many of the other junglers we have available. So that's why I don't understand his picky and the way he decided to play the early game. But it goes for all of ROCCAT. It's way too passive. It looks like they're basically scared to do anything and just try and wait for the other team to make a move, and suddenly they fall behind due to it.
Now, see if they can maybe improve going into the following weeks, maybe just step it up and fix those early game holes. We'll see what happens with that. But now, for now, we're going to go ahead and shine a light on H2k's second win this week, sending it over to Shox at the analyst desk.
Thank you very much, Pyrotechnics. We're joined here by H2k's top laner, Oduwamne, and their coach, Prali. Congratulations, guys. That is 2-0 on the board for this one. Prali, talk me through what the initial game plan was, because you guys started off slow, and then when you flipped the switch and just went all in.
Well, I did tell them I think we had a comp advantage in terms of scaling and in terms of just a pure 5v5. So I kind of reassured them, like, you guys don't have to go too crazy to get an advantage early game. Just, you know, do your thing and, like, don't play passive, because that's going to be a bad thing. So kind of just do your thing and keep up aggression, but don't think you have to make plays to win the game.
Although I saw that ROCCAT's lane stopped away from you guys. Did you guys expect that, or did you guys expect to go into the 2v2?
We thought about it in Champions League that they might lane swap and give Maokai a camp and send him with the TP bots, because his laning 1v2 is pretty easy, especially when he gets a camps. But it didn't really bother us. Like, I just gave a leash to Lulex and then we just like transitioned into double jungling.
Right. When you did end up in the lane versus Maokai, you were able to get the better of him even with the ganks coming in. Let's actually get a replay up on the screen from a moment where, honestly, I thought you were dead, but you got out of it. Talk us through it.
Since I built tanky, I knew that it was quite easy for me to just cut it out. So I just waited to stack my passive and get my W procs off as much as possible. And I wasn't backing off a second. I was just running around waiting for my passive. And I knew that they would overextend for me to kill me when my passive was out, but it just came up in time. And then I just got my ulti off and then escaped.
Yep, you did. Did you notice that Maokai in that one, or Overpower, had the Righteous Glory? He didn't finish his Route of Ages. Did that influence your decision, or were you just going to go in anyway?
No, I would have went in anyway. I just noticed in the middle of the gang that he procced the Righteous Glory and started charging him, and I was like, oh, okay. I'm just going to go with it anyway.
Probably, something I want to ask you, actually, because the ROCCAT composition, for me, it looks like they'll eventually like just run out of damage, and the only way they can win is just like taking a lot of towers down. Was that something you were worried about, or did you just like focus on wave clear, or like?
Once the game started and I realized they 2v1'd, it became a concern that they would take turrets too quickly and we wouldn't be able to come back. But the bigger concern that I kind of stressed to the guys was we had an immobile mid and they had Lee Sin, Lissandra.
Yeah.
So in my mind, I'm like, all right, their game plan, if they just camp the hell out of mid, it's gonna, you know, destroy us, because they took top turret, took bot turret, and if the mid ganks worked, I don't think we would really have our opening to come back in the game.
So for Oduwamne, you guys have been in the LCS now for a couple of weeks. Have your practice methods changed a bit? Like, are you getting used to, you know, the LCS rhythm of like playing 2 matches every week and preparing for opponents, or is there something that has changed from your time in the past as like the amateur scene?
Yeah, it definitely changed. Like, scrims now make a lot more sense. We practice every week different specific things, and we just have different scrim goals every scrim set we go into, and we just prepare for the teams that we will face each week.
Looks like you've taken a huge leap forward, and this week specifically, probably have you noticed a notable difference in the way they're communicating? Because it seems to be very clear, forward when you have an advantage, push it through.
Every week it kind of gets better, but it's kind of hit or miss in scrims, at least for communication, because it's like, you know, if things are going well, they're like, hey, buddy, let's go do ganks. And then when things are going bad, they're like, I'm just going to farm until the scrim's over. So scrims were going bad this week, which are really good for us, because whenever we lose scrims, we do well in the LCS. So when communication goes down, it's always kind of like a panic, because I'm like, you know, I haven't seen them communicate that well in scrims yet, but every time I watch them in LCS, I know they're doing everything the way they wanted to in scrims.
At least we know you have a lot of experience with bad scrims.
I sure do.
Final question for you, Oduwamne. In the very first week that Krepa was here, he was saying that you were the only player he saw that was already on LCS level and maybe even one of the best top laners in the league. Do you feel like now slowly you're able to prove where your skill ceiling is?
Well, each game is definitely a chance for me to improve my skills, but I don't really think about it that much. I just try to give my best, and I just take everything as a learning experience.
Well, that is the right approach. I would say 2-0. Congratulations, gentlemen, in this one. We're going to step away for a moment, but when we return, SK Gaming will take on Giants. Stay with us. We'll see you in a few.
Still not quite tanky enough, and they're keying off on him despite the Vander ult. Now they're going to turn attention to the Janna.
Okay. Listen. Okay.
Go. He's going to twist and advance. Lulex has to flash away from this one. Ryu Otoamne all very low. Wolite is going to pick up Yarn, and maybe they can find a turnaround here. Nuke Duck is trying to make the play on him. He's going to go down, and they're still going to find Kasing. H2k stack another win.